everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Leandra the TBR0, and about a month ago, I challenged you to provide me with as many recommendations as possible to fill out my very specific book requests, and I received so many comments, so many book recommendations that I am grateful, and I thought that I could pay it forward by answering some of your own very specific requests. Thank you so much for those of you who commented recommendations, but also who went out on a limb and provided me with some specific requests that you just want to see more in books and you want to be able to add to your own TBR. I did my best to provide a few options for each request I received. Some of them are books I've read, some of them are books I haven't, but either they're on my own TBR list or looking at the synopsis, I think they would fulfill your own request pretty well. If you're watching this video and you realize that you have more requests or you missed out on the first opportunity, please be sure to comment below another request that you have and I can see if I can fill it out and maybe make this a series. No request is too vague or too specific, so please feel free to get creative or be genuine in what kind of books you actually want recommendations for. The first book request that I'm going to fulfill is from They say, as far as a request of my own, time loops not related to romance. The more confusing the better, though it does have to come together by the end, even if it takes some thinking to sort it all out. I love this because I'm someone who also really enjoys a time loop, and I understand there are so many options when it comes to a Groundhog's Day-esque theme with romance. There's the do-over, the 7-year slip, there's a couple other options that I found, and I was like, I understand why this person is struggling to find books without romance in them, or at least the romance isn't the primary genre or the primary pull for picking up the book. But I was able to provide a couple options. 2 of them are books I have read, so I can confidently provide you with them as a recommendation. The first one is The Paradox Hotel by Rob Hart. I literally just finished this book yesterday, and it does have this really excellent complex narrative of time being fused, present moments, past moments, future moments, and our main character, she is the head of security at the Paradox Hotel, a time-traveling hotel, but unfortunately she has become unstuck, which is a condition that occurs to people who time travel too often, and so she's losing her sense of reality. She is having her mind, her memory bleed with past memories and future events to the point where it almost feels like she's seeing ghosts. I think it ends up pulling off in the end where she's able to anticipate events when she sees future things, but also connect dots to past memories as well. So I would say that this is an excellent sci-fi mystery that has that time loop feel that you're looking for. Another book that I can recommend is Sea of Tranquility. This one is by Emily St. John Mandel, and it has time travel, and there's this excellent moment where you start to see all of the timelines overlap, and I think that the author did a really great job of implementing time travel while also making sure that even if you don't know what's happening at the time, or you think you do, by the end of the book, you realize the overall events were coming to this one big moment, and it's excellent. I cannot recommend it enough. Now, the books I haven't read but are on my own radar, I thought I would give them to you even if I'm not fully sure they're going to have the time loop that you're looking for. The first one that's on my big list is actually The 22 Murders of Madison May by Max Barry. I'll admit this isn't really a time loop, it's actually multiple universes, and our main character is chasing a killer throughout each universe as he continues to kill this one person, Madison May. She's basically trying to figure out why is he killing this woman and what is his end game? Can she stop him? So as she follows him throughout each universe, that's pretty much the premise of the entire book, I think. Another option that I haven't read myself, but I think fits your time loop request, is How to Survive Your Murder by Danielle Valentine. This is a YA horror thriller, and it follows a young protagonist whose sister died the year before under horrific means. Her killer is now on trial, and on the first day of the trial, our main character ends up getting knocked out by a Sidney Prescott lookalike, and that takes her back to the day her sister is meant to die. And to my understanding, she is trying to stop this killer, stop these events from happening, so that in the present timeline, her sister is alive. The next request comes from Julie, Keep Calm with Books and Coffee, and she says, as far as what I'm looking for, I want a book with very specific gods or magics, like plant magic or gods of specific skills, or books that blend sci-fi and fantasy, such as Annihilation or Kate Daniels' series. Well, Julie, I've got 2 book recommendations I can provide you that I've read myself. The first one is The Tainted Cup. I have it right here by Robert Jackson Bennett. This has a great blend of sci-fi and fantasy, and it's also got a very specific magical system that's dependent on the leviathans that are terrorizing our empire. There are these huge sea walls keeping the leviathans out. However, every time there's a breach, it seems ever more possible that eventually the leviathans will just be running rampant and the empire will fall. There's also a mystery element that gives us Sherlock Holmes vibes. We have our own Sherlock and Watson duo trying to solve the mysterious murder of this man who is killed by dangerous flora, and it seems as though he's the first of many who are going to be experiencing this terrible fate. I thought that the magical system was pretty complex, and it is linked to science. There are experts looking into how it allows our characters to enhance their abilities, but it also deteriorates their bodies in certain ways. So I would say that this is probably the best book for you right now out of the requests that you gave me. Another book that I would have to recommend to you is Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. This is another fantasy mystery. I know, I'm a mystery person, what can I say? But I think it's pretty sophisticated as far as these characters' abilities. We have 13 provinces that have been blessed by the goddess on the mountain. She gives each heir of each province a different ability, and then that gets passed down from generation to generation. Currently, these 12 heirs are making their way to visit the goddess, and murder occurs. Multiple murders occur on this boat, and it's up to our main character, Dee, to figure out what's going on, and part of their investigation is to figure out what each heir's magical ability is and if that could help them kill the others on the boat. And just a third bonus of a book that I have read that fits sci-fi fantasy elements that is pretty sophisticated is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, but I can't remember, Julie, if you read that or not. So I'm just tagging it on because I didn't check before I recommended it. Next, I will be fulfilling requests from Yelena, and she says, for any specific trope recommendation request, I'd love more recs for closed room mysteries in space or spaceships, or generally mysteries in space. Bonus if it has a small crew of characters. Well, Yelena, you've come to the right place. I have a handful of books I can recommend you. The first one that I'll provide that isn't necessarily small crew, but it is a very selective number of people who are on the station, and they've all been on the station for quite some time together, meaning that there aren't any outsiders or strangers that you can look into for the craziness that's happening. It's clearly someone from the inside that everyone knows, which adds to the drama. That is Station Eternity by Mur Lafferty. I know you have heard of Mur Lafferty before. I'm not sure if you've read this specific title. And the reason why I know that is because you recommended Six Wakes to me, and you're not the only one. A handful of comments listed this specific title, so clearly I need to check it out. Station Eternity was my first experience with this author, and I really loved it. You could tell that the author adores detective fiction and infused a lot of those tropes and classic elements, but just in the setting of a space station. I also think I have a winner with The Spare Man by Mary Robinette Kowal. This one is a mystery set on a space cruise to Mars. This book follows Tesla Crane while she and her new husband are on their way to enjoy their honeymoon. However, a murder occurs. Her husband is actually the one who is arrested for the crime. She knows he didn't commit it, and she has to proceed on this ship asking questions, figuring out who actually killed this person and why, before her husband ends up getting into more trouble than he already is in. And then finally, I can recommend The Mimicking of Known Successes by Malka Older. This one isn't on a space station or a spaceship or anything like that. It's actually set on Jupiter, but I would argue that because it's not on Earth, it's still a mystery in space in a way. This one is yet again a book that is inspired by Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. It's actually a reimagining, and it follows these two characters that were once in a romantic relationship together. So we also have sapphic love. It is a novella, and the author does pack a lot of things into this narrative that I think may have been overreaching. However, I still enjoyed it. I still want to continue the series because book 2 is already out, and I also would be willing to reread it to see if I could enjoy and find the details I missed the first time around. Another request I received was from Kat, the fairy librarian, saying, I thought of something that I'm looking for. books with mixed media, but specifically ones where the mixed media serves a purpose. So for example, I really love how Janice Hallett uses mixed media in her books to create sort of an unreliable narrator. It's actually so funny that you mentioned Janice Hallett because my immediate thought was The Examiner by Janice Hallett. I haven't read it. It's her newest publication. It just came out, I believe, in the last month, and I actually have it borrowed from the library, so cross our fingers. I hope it's exactly the book that you and I want to read, but it is a culmination of various forms of media communication, and it becomes up to you to literally figure out what happened. I believe that the main characters are a teacher and 6 students. When the teacher enters the room, a murder has occurred, or at least some type of crime, and then now we have to sift through emails, text messages to figure out what actually happened in this room to the person who died. It feels very weird to start off with a recommendation that I haven't read myself, but I had to say it because you brought up the author. Moving back to books that I have read that I can recommend include Bury Your Gaze. Actually, this one by Chuck Tingle does have a little bit of mixed media because we do get the screenwriting format periodically. It's mostly a traditional novel, but then once in a while we will have a new formatting where we see the main character almost as his own main character within the book. There is a script following his actions, and it takes a little while, but by the end of the book you realize why these scenes were put in there and what they actually mean. When I was reading them throughout the novel, I was like, okay, this is kind of weird and creative, fine. And I didn't realize their importance until the end of the novel, and I absolutely loved that. Another one I can recommend is The Highland Falcon Thief. This is a middle grade novel for the Adventures on Train series, and the reason why I would argue it's mixed media is because the illustrations are used with purpose. A lot of middle grade books are known for their illustrations just to enhance and add texture to the novel, but for this specific book we learn that Hal, our main character, he really loves drawing, and so the illustrations throughout the book are meant to be his as he's drawing what he's seeing, whether it's the crime scene or a cast of characters. So it's really lovely to see the illustrations through his eyes rather than just as an additional thing. So when you say you want mixed media with purpose, I think that this is a well done reasoning for why there is illustrations in there, not just to have fun with seeing and imagining this world, but it's as if the main character drew them himself. And finally, a book that I haven't read myself but is on my list to read this month is Night Film by Marsha Pessel. That one probably most heavily uses mixed media within its pages, more than I've ever seen before, and I'm very excited. So I'm tentative to recommend it because obviously I don't know if it's mixed media with purpose, but I feel like it is, so that's why I'm just gonna add it here. Next, we had someone who really gave me a request that was tough, and I don't feel very confident in providing any strong recommendations. So if you in the comments want to provide any additional recommendations for any of these requests, this one in particular, but any of the ones I've already mentioned, ones I'm about to mention, actually please provide them. It would be really great, especially because then when these people come and see this video, they can look in the comments and find more recommendations beyond what I'm telling them to read. So let's get to this difficult request, at least difficult for me. Bucky says, I like the time travel trope and masked heroes. I'd like a book that combines the two. And oh boy, it was really hard for me to imagine the idea of what a masked hero is. Like, are we talking superheroes, like a literal mask? Or are we more thinking dramatic reveals of who a person actually is? Maybe they're performing, maybe they have an alias. And in the end, I had one book that I feel kind of confident in recommending, and then a handful that I'm not really sure, Bucky, if these are going to be up your alley, but we're going to give it a shot. The book I have read is one that I've already mentioned, Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. This one has time travel, and we do have this one character who's kind of taken on the hero role in trying to help change time, change the fates of others. This gets him in significant trouble as well, but I think in the end it ends up being this beautiful story, and he really is the hero of the story, even if he wasn't expecting to be the hero that he was, if that makes sense. I love the book, so it's very easy for me to recommend it as much as I can. And then I just have a hodgepodge of random titles that I thought looked really good. The one that I think is the strongest, that I haven't read but is now officially on my own TBR list, is How to Live Safely in a Science Fiction Universe. Apparently it follows a main character whose sole job is to save people from themselves. They go back in time trying to alter history, change their own timeline, and it's his job to go back and fix whatever they've done or prevent them from making any changes. So rather than being a masked hero, I feel like he's probably more of an unsung hero. He's the hero that no one wants to see because they want the ability to go change universe as much as they can, but like he's protecting them from themselves. So I feel like he's a hero that we need, but a lot of people in the book probably don't want. And then a couple other titles that just kind of popped out to me were The Rise and Fall of Dodo, as well as The Future of Another Timeline. I literally at this point can't remember what they're about, but they looked like really interesting titles, and I thought that they kind of had at least the time travel element. I just don't know if they have the masked heroes element. So like I said, anyone, if you can help me out to help Bucky, please put in the comments a book recommendation that has those two tropes put together, because I was pretty much at a loss. Next we have Mooney, and they gave me 3 different book requests that I could potentially fill. They said, I'm always searching for books that 1, make me want to eat the rich, 2, keep the reader in the dark for a while. Think Piranesi or Cloud Cuckoo Land. And then 3, have complex character dynamics, preferably with a lot of history between the characters. For books that make you want to eat the rich, I did find 3 options that are all very, very different from each other. The first one is Escape Velocity by Victor Medibo. This one is a sci-fi thriller that is set on a space station / hotel. The book follows a class reunion that's taking place at this hotel, and everyone's trying to up their status, prove that they deserve to be in the settlement to Mars because Earth is dying. Meanwhile, we have this secondary plot that involves the staff at the hotel. Clearly things are going on under the radar, and I was really impressed by the important social commentary that we see from Medibo, and I think it's going to make you want to eat the rich. I won't say anything else. Then there's Pleasantville by Attica Locke. Now this is technically a sequel, but you don't have to read book 1 first in the series to follow this one. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I did not read book 1. I want to, but I still haven't. This book has so many events going on that I don't even know what's the most important thing to tell you about. But basically there is a mayoral election going on, while also there are disappearances of young Black women, and it seems like they might be connected. Our main character is a lawyer who is trying to get down to the bottom of these things while also defending certain community members in this eco-racism case that was impacting people, and these huge companies are trying to get away with it. There's so much to unpack here. I promise you, it will make you want to eat the rich. And then finally, probably the most surprising recommendation is actually a middle grade book, Bright Storm by Vashti Hardy. This is the first book in the Bright Storm children's series, and it really does make you feel as though, wow, the elite, generational wealth, all of it is harming us more than it's helping us. And what sparks this story is that these 2 children's father is an explorer. He goes missing under mysterious circumstances. Everyone says that it's his own fault, that he was doing something in error, but the 2 children know for a fact that their father wouldn't be like that. It's just that society looks down upon him because he is a new adventurer. He doesn't come from a long line of adventurers. So basically his twin children have to go on an adventure themselves to find out what actually happened to him. And there's a lot of social commentary in it. I'm honestly so obsessed with that series. Let's move on to the second request that you gave me, a book that leaves the reader in the dark for a while. I was so glad that you gave me a couple book title options to compare my suggestions with, because it really helped me narrow it down, and I have 3 books for you. The first one I actually have in my hand, You Too Can Have a Body Like Mine by Alexander Kleeman. This is an author you probably can lean on across her canon, but this one in particular I think is the most confusing but worthwhile to get through. To give you a bit of a taste, it says, a woman known only as A lives in an unnamed American city with her roommate B and boyfriend C, who wants her to join him on a reality dating show called That's My Partner. A eats or doesn't eat the right things, watches endless amounts of television, often just for the commercials, and models herself on a standard of beauty that exists only in such advertising. And basically A ends up finding herself almost in this kind of cultish experience while also having these strange cravings, and it just feels like the world is kind of melting around you as you read. It's kind of crazy, but I think that she pulls it off in the end. Two other books that I've read that I really think match the whole idea of it pays off in the end, even if you don't know what's going on for like 75% of it. Lincoln in the Bardo. This one is by George Saunders, and it's written in play format, so we really don't get any outside descriptions. We are just getting dialogue, and I will admit, it takes a little while to get used to the tone, to get used to that formatting, but the ending is an explosion of just like pure creativity that I'm really impressed that the author pulled it off, because it's an authentic book. It follows the death of Abraham Lincoln's son and his grieving of it while his son is in the graveyard with these other ghosts trying to help him move on. And then we have Appleseed by Matt Bell, the book that I'm trying to get everyone to read because not enough people talk about it. This one is sci-fi dystopian, and the weirdness of it, the kind of keeping the reader in the dark, is the fact that we are following 3 different timelines, and it takes a while for you to understand how these 3 timelines are linked because they're so far apart from each other. I promise the 3 timelines are linked, but you just have to figure out why, and it does take some time to see the link, but when you do, you're just like, oh, it's amazing. Then we have a recommendation request from Morticia, and her request is right up my alley. She says, I love everything ghost, so I'm looking for books that are haunted or even with afterlife in them. I'm so excited for this. Lincoln in the Bardo. Literally every single character is a ghost except for Abraham Lincoln himself. Then I have a middle grade option, Ophi's Ghosts. This one's by Justina Ireland, and our main character, Ophi, she can see ghosts. Following the death of her father due to racial violence, Ophi and her mother move north and begin to work at this manor estate, and Ophi realizes that this estate is full of ghosts and she can see them, and it seems like there's a mystery, maybe a cold case that she needs to solve while she's working at the property and interacting with these ghosts before something even more dangerous happens. Another option that I just read that is at the moment my favorite book of the year is Grave Expectations by Alice Bell. The reason why I'm recommending Grave Expectations is because within our Scooby Gang, our ragtag group of main characters, we do have a teen ghost. She ended up dying under mysterious circumstances as a teen in the early 2000s, and she is tethered to her best friend, who is now an adult and a medium for hire. They end up going to this estate. They are hired to perform a seance. Someone dies, and more strange things happen from there. The ghosts are very important in this. They are very active in this story, so that's why I feel confident to recommend this to you. Following the request for ghosts, I have Kirsten from The Reading Nymph, and this is perfect because she recently, in the last month or so, did a vlog on this topic, so clearly it was on her mind when she was watching my video. She says, my specific request is light academia, so books like Lady Trent series and Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Well, I've read the latter and the former is on my TBR, so it seems as though, Kirsten, you and I have very similar tastes in light academia. Unfortunately, I only have one book recommendation on this list that I have read. The others are books that I also want to read, so I feel it's okay to just pass them along to you to see if they end up being your taste as well. The book I have read is Library of the Unwritten. I read it a couple months ago, and I think that it could be up your alley as far as what you're looking for. No, our main character isn't necessarily a scholar, but she is the librarian who is in charge of taking care of the library of unfinished books. This is housed in hell for some reason, and it's her job to prevent characters from jumping out of their books and making their way to Earth. What's really interesting about this is we have books that have authors who are still alive, but then we also have books whose authors failed to finish their books before they died, and so these character stories are never finished. We also see an array of different types of afterlives, and it's a bit of a journey book, but one that does it in a way that you wouldn't expect. And now for books I haven't read, but as I said, they're on my radar. I want to read them, and I think that they would be deemed light academia. The one I'm the least confident about is The Invisible Library. This one I have borrowed from the library so many times, and I keep having to return it because I don't read it in time, but I think that it's light academia. I also found The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love. This one seems to be historical fantasy with romance, and it It feels like it's like academia. I mean, we've got an ornithologist as a main character. And then finally, a manga that I think looks adorable and I meant to read, I think it was like last year and I just didn't get to it, but your request reminded me of it, and that is Ascendance of a Bookworm. The main character is striving to become a librarian at all costs, and it looks so sweet. Oh, the next one is Helen's Bookhaven. So Helen gave me a request that I actually easily thought of one title, and then I decided to go a little bit further and do some research to find a couple others in case Helen has read the one that I've read. Her request is any books on matchmaking services. I loved the TV series Miss Match, the book Kismetology, and Miss Hart's Marriage Bureau. I immediately thought of Lunar Love. This is a book that came out, I believe, last year or the year before, and actually the author has come out with a second book. I don't know if it's in the same vein, but it's called The Red String Theory. But Lunar Love follows two characters who are in the matchmaking business. One of them is from the traditional zodiac matchmaking. She has inherited her grandmother's own business and she's hoping to revive it and have people return to that traditional way of finding love. Meanwhile, as she's endeavoring to do that, she discovers that a man who will eventually be her love interest, he's created an app that is very loosely based off of the Chinese zodiac, and that honestly kind of offends her and worries her because she thinks that he is her biggest competition. So chaos ensues. They end up kind of finding their way to each other, and it's a very sweet book. And then I just have a handful of titles that look like they'd be really fun, and they do involve matchmaking. I found Adam and Evie's Matchmaking Tour, Matchmaking for Beginners, and Mr. Perfect on Paper. This one follows a Jewish dating service, so if you're looking for something a little outside the norm, it might be perfect for you as well. Then we have Katie Reads Cozies and More. First of all, Katie, I love the name of your channel. It's so adorable. And you asked for me, I love found family, teamwork of any kind, and happily ever after for the main characters. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of these titles are really popular or well known, so I'm worried that all of the books I'm recommending you have been books you've read, but we're gonna take a chance. Number one is Legends and Lattes. It's cozy fantasy. It follows an orc who wants to open up a cafe, and you just see more and more creatures interacting with the business, finding their own home, and it's so sweet. I would also recommend the Marlowe Murder Club series by Robert Thorogood. This follows three women from very different walks of life who come together to solve murders that are going on in Marlowe. That's obviously the first book, and then with every passing book, these three women end up having a stronger friendship, and in a way, it ends up being a bit of a found family, especially for our oldest protagonist. She's in her 80s, very lonely, and in finding these two women, including them in her life, she has kind of built a family around her. And then one that I haven't read yet, but I really do want to read, and I think it probably will have at least the found family or like happily ever after ending that might be a bit bittersweet, I don't know, is Floating Hotel. This one is deemed slice of life sci-fi, and it does have a hotel setting. I know, I keep talking about books with hotels, what can I say? But it looks really good, it looks wholesome, it looks sweet, and I just can't wait to read it myself. And finally, the last person to provide me with a book request was Laura, the Book Hermit. By the way, Laura, I know that you recently had an injury that you're recovering from, so I just wanted to say that all the good thoughts, all the good vibes to you as you heal, and just wanted to let you know that we're thinking about you. They ended up saying, could you recommend me a book that has older and lovable side characters or a book that has sentient side characters? Well, for the latter, I can provide you with quite a few options. The first one I thought of was The Paradox Hotel, which I already talked about. That one, the main character who's the house detective, she has a sentient AI robot that just like hovers around her all the time named Ruby, and she hates it, but it is just like a constant presence and you can still see the bond between them, so I think it would actually be really perfect for you. Other options of sentience that aren't necessarily sentient AI, but sentient involving plants, involving animals, include Hunt the Stars. There is a fox-like dog character named Luna who just steals your heart and has a form of sentience because she is able to project images into other characters' minds to provide thoughts, feelings in her own way, and it's a really fun added texture to the story. That one is a space opera romance, and I can't recommend the series enough. One that I know Laura has read, but I have to mention it because it does have two really excellent examples of sentient plant life, and that is The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. I can't remember her name, but The Spell Shop, it's the book that everyone is like screaming about, and I think it would be perfect for those looking for sentient side characters. And then also Cackle by Rachel Harrison. This one has some sentience in it. I don't want to get too in-depth into it because I think it's kind of fun to go in blindly. So Laura, if you haven't read it, it's a very cozy, kind of autumnal vibes read with witchcraft and yes, a certain sentient character that I know everyone loves. And to provide one potential old, lovable side character, she's not really a side character, she's a main character, but I still wanted to provide it to you, and that is A Cat from Our World and the Forgotten Witch. The elderly character that is lovable while still being a bit grumpy, still rough around the edges, is the Forgotten Witch herself, Janine. I really love her backstory, the explanation for why she's so hardened, and yet she has this oversized cat that she keeps around, that she feeds and takes care of. So it's a really kind of like ornery love, and I think that you'll enjoy it. All right, those are all of my recommendations for the very specific requests that you gave to me. Don't forget to provide your own recommendations for these requests in the comments. If there was one that you were like, oh, Leandra, you missed a perfect title and this person's never going to get to it, please put it in the comments. Make sure that they know that you heard their request and that you very kindly provided an even better answer than I was able to do. Also, if you have your own very specific requests that I wasn't able to get to, please include them in the comments below, and I am more than happy to do a part 2 to this video. Thanks everyone for getting to the end. I really do appreciate you, and thank you to my Manor guests. You are always in my heart. I really appreciate your constant presence in my life, and if you did miss my very important requests video and you want to see what those were or see what other people thought to recommend me, I'll make sure to have it here so you can go back, see what I requested, and yeah, just have fun seeing if you can recommend me even more books. That's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next one. At least I hope I do. Bye!